Rimuru Lumiel Angel of Void by Rimu_Kai. Skills. The void was not blackness. It was not silence. It was existence before existence, a tapestry of utter stillness where even time dared not flow. Here, where no mortal mind could comprehend the absence, there drifted the lonely remnants of divine intent. Stars did not shine, yet possibilities bloomed. Space did not stretch, yet infinite worlds flickered, newborn, incomplete, and hauntingly empty. These were the lesser creations, forged from nihility, a breath of Veldonava's boundless authority. They sprawled endlessly, billions upon billions of realms where no wind blew, no beast stirred, and no eye had ever gazed. Time flowed, but no one existed to measure it. Yet amidst this desolate infinity, one world pulsed, not with chaos but with purpose. The cardinal world, the heart of existence, shimmered like a pearl in a sea of ash. It was sculpted not from nothingness, but from stardust, pure essence of creation, untouched by destruction or decay. Floating continents drifted like titanic leaves upon the breeze of time, oceans curled in silence, and mountains stretched into the heavens without gods to name them. Here, both the physical and the spiritual would one day gather. Here, life would one day begin. But for now, it too remained empty, untouched by song or sorrow. Above it all, suspended within the heart of the void, stood the heavenly star palace, Veldonava's throne. Unlike the cold perfection of his multiverses, the palace was a contradiction, a castle of light and marble, resting upon a vast meadow of gentle green grass, which somehow flourished in the vacuum of the void. Wildflowers swayed despite the absence of wind. A skyless sun hovered eternally overhead, casting soft gold rays upon the sprawling terraces. From the outside, the castle resembled a sacred cathedral, with domed towers, floating spires, and glowing bridges of light connecting each sanctum. Holy magic flowed through the air, singing a silent hymn of order and peace. But inside, the palace was far more human. Deep within its heart, in a room crafted for comfort more than divinity, lay the living hall, a space drenched in warm lighting and calm shadows. Velvet curtains of lavender and white framed tall, arched windows through which nothing could be seen. Marble floors were softened by rugs woven from celestial threads. A small fireplace glowed with controlled stardust flames. In the center of the room was a large, plush couch, pink, wide enough for 5, though only one figure sat upon it. The figure was impossibly beautiful, their form androgynous, bathed in an aura that gently twisted perception. Long jet-black hair flowed over their shoulders, speckled with white dots, mimicking a midnight sky full of stars. 2 dragon-like horns, gray and elegant, curled from their head. And from their glowing blue eyes, one could glimpse both sorrow and serenity, an eternal contradiction. This was none other than Veldonava, the Star King Dragon, first of all dragons and the Stella Dragon. The god of creation, the one who built everything from nothing. He sat calmly, sipping fragrant tea from a porcelain cup. Behind him stood 2 of his 8 primordial angels. One was Dino, casual and aloof, with short silver-blonde hair that appeared more ash-gray under the palace light. His yellow eyes were half-lidded with boredom, and he leaned on his greatsword like it were a walking stick. Despite being born of holy light, Dino rarely acted like a servant of the divine. He was laid back, disinterested, and only followed orders when pressured. Beside him stood the first and strongest of the primordial angels, Feldway. If Veldonava had ever cast a reflection, it would be Feldway. With long, flowing white hair, glowing blue eyes, and identical dragonic horns, Feldway was a perfect imitation of his creator, by choice. He had begged, pleaded, and worshipped until Veldonava relented, sculpting Feldway's true form in his exact image. This act, done out of amusement, perhaps pity, had unintentional consequences. Feldway became the strongest of the angels. Not due to strength of will, but because his body was closer to divine perfection. Yet his ego remained as weak as the others, an obedient light, shaped by its master's desire. And yet, Veldosama, Feldway's voice cooed, hands clasped at his chest. Would you like your tea warmer? Perhaps I could. No need, Veldonava replied with a soft sigh, not unkindly. But perhaps if I infused it with solar flare essence. Or brewed it in the dimensional tea kettle I made just for Feldway. One word. That was all it took. Feldway immediately went silent, eyes shining with absolute adoration and submissive awe. In contrast, Dino rolled his eyes and scratched his neck. How do you even live with yourself? He muttered. The other 6 angels were spread across the castle, serving their roles as silent administrators. Their egos were shallow, their faces blank, their voices soft. They carried out Veldonava's orders without resistance, without question. Like humans without emotion, they existed to function, not to feel. All of them, except Lumiel. The eighth angel, and the only one born unbidden, Lumiel was a curiosity in every sense. He was weaker in power, yes, his magicules barely reached the threshold of true combat. But his will, his ego, was subtly defiant. He respected Veldonava, always calling him, Veldonava-sama, with gentle reverence. But he refused to act like a puppet. He did not serve in the kitchens. He did not polish the halls. He was not seen cleaning the scroll vault or guarding the outer sanctum. Instead, Lumiel spent his time alone, often vanishing for hours, or days, into the recesses of the Star Palace or the outer realms of unformed worlds. He performed experiments, gathered stardust, whispered to the systems that hummed beneath the reality itself. He was curious, and Veldonava noticed. He's like me, the god thought, sipping his tea. Always wondering, always seeking. And because of that, the other angels disliked Lumiel. To them, he was abnormal. He did not follow the pattern. He did not act with devotion. They felt unease near him, a quiet threat in his gaze, not of malice but of freedom. Only Dino got along with Lumiel. Perhaps because both preferred slacking, though Dino lacked the discipline to study anything deeply. Even their quiet alliance never lasted long. Feldway, ever vigilant in his obsession, often dragged Dino back from whatever rooftop or corridor he and Lumiel escaped to. Veldonava watched it all unfold, saying nothing. He no longer knew everything. Not anymore. To create true life, to govern without constant interference, he had sacrificed his own omniscience. In its place, he created two vast systems. The first, voice of the world. A near-omniscient program that governed evolution, life, death, and rebirth across the cardinal world and others. It was gentle, systematic, and passive. The second, voice of the cosmos. A far grander entity, one that watched over the entire multiverse, controlled the laws of space, time, and reality itself. It was truly omniscient, something even Veldonava could no longer claim to be. He had trusted it. He believed he was alone in all of existence. The only one who could become God. But in that moment, as he looked over the rim of his teacup, his eyes lingered not on Dino or Feldway, but on the empty corridor where Lumiel had vanished once more. You weren't supposed to exist, he whispered to no one. So why do I feel, you're the one thing I cannot predict? And thus, the day continued, the void pulsing in quiet silence. The stars blinked unseen, the angels moved like shadows, and Lumiel walked the path no one had paved. Time passed, or at least, something like it. In the void where no sun rose, where no moon fell, years melted into moments. Eons drifted by like feathers on still air. For beings without a need for sleep or death, time was both meaningless and ever-present. The primordial angels remained unchanged, serving, watching, obeying. Yet even within this timeless realm, change bloomed in subtle cracks. And among those, the most curious change was the Star King Dragon himself. Once all-knowing, Veldonava had grown used to absolute omniscience, every answer at his fingertips, every future laid bare. Yet, after sacrificing his cosmic awareness to give birth to the voice of the world and the voice of the cosmos, he found something strange in the uncertainty. He found fun. He became more playful, carefree, sometimes even childishly mischievous. He laughed more. He poked fun at his angels. Sometimes he vanished for hours just to go bother his own creations. He had always been gentle, but now, he was unpredictable. It suited him. One day, upon the endless grassfield that surrounded the heavenly Star Palace, Veldonava sat cross-legged, fingers twitching with divine energy. His long, midnight black hair shimmered with tiny stars, and his glowing blue eyes were filled with a strange spark. He stared into the open void, the air thick with divine power. Voice of the world, he called casually, like summoning a friend for a card game. I want to have some fun. The response came instantly, echoing through space and soul. A voice that was neither male nor female, yet clearly respectful, answered in serene tones. Acknowledged, Veldonava-sama. How may I assist you? Veldonava grinned, raising a hand as if preparing a challenge. Let's play a game. I challenge you, to a contest of creation. There was a brief pause. The windless field trembled with invisible tension. Please clarify the parameters of this contest. Simple, Veldonava said, a spark of amusement in his tone. Let's see who can create the most powerful and elegant ultimate skills. Think of it as inspiration for future worlds. Understood. Engaging creation protocol. Commencing ultimate skill synthesis. Veldonava cracked his knuckles. Hey, don't underestimate me, voice. I invented you, remember? And so the divine competition began. For several minutes that might have been years to lesser minds, Veldonava worked furiously. His divine will burned like 1,000 suns, cosmic runes swirling around him. Concepts, laws, desires, and meanings twisted into form as skills were forged from the essence of his power. By the end, sweat lined his brow, not from exertion, but from sheer focus. He leaned back and exhaled, wiping his forehead. Phew, that was harder than I thought. Voice, I'm done. I made 16 ultimate skills. Pretty shocking, right? There was silence for a moment. Then, the voice returned. Calm, clinical, devastating. In the span of this activity, I have synthesized 120 billion ultimate skills. Please confirm your final count. Veldonava blinked. Slowly. You have created 16 ultimate skills. I have created 120 billion. The god's mouth fell open. He stared at the sky, slack-jawed, speechless. Then, you cheated. This system cannot perform cheating. All processes were within agreed parameters. If dissatisfaction persists, you may file an appeal with the system tribunal. That tribunal doesn't even exist yet. He shouted, cheeks puffed up in flustered indignation. Veldonava crossed his arms, legs kicking childishly at the grass. How can you be so smug without even having a face? You're supposed to serve me, not outperform me, damn it. And with that, the creator of existence pouted, literally. Far in the distance, near the front gate of the Star Palace, Dino leaned against a marble pillar, half asleep with his greatsword resting on his shoulder. His yellow eyes were half-lidded, flicking toward his master with mild amusement. Is he pouting again? Dino muttered to himself, smirking. Yup, he's pouting again. Just then, the sound of soft steps approached. Lumiel arrived, his silver-blue eyes as unreadable as ever, long snowy hair swaying gently as he walked. His presence was quiet, deliberate. He moved like someone who preferred silence, yet was used to being watched. Dino turned to him and gave a lazy wave. Yo, what's up? Lumiel's expression didn't shift much, but his voice came soft and calm. Feldway and Zolario complained again. Dino winced. Again, let me guess, they don't like your attitude. Lumiel gave a light shrug, the faintest twitch of annoyance in his eyes. They say I lack the appropriate reverence expected of an angel. So I sneaked out. Dino chuckled. TCH. Those two are the worst. Feldway worships Veldonava like a fangirl, and Zolario thinks we should all walk in straight lines and recite regulations. Lumiel's gaze drifted past Dino, toward the grassfield. Veldonava was still sitting there, sulking like a child denied candy. What is Veldonava-sama doing? He asked. Dino followed his gaze. Oh, that. He challenged the voice of the world to see who could create better ultimate skills. I think he managed 16 before the voice whipped out like 120 billion. Lumiel blinked. Once. He lost. Yeah, Dino said, yawning. Totally. I was trying to sleep standing up, then suddenly, boom. Ultimate skill contest. Now he's sulking. Lumiel tilted his head, watching Veldonava's ungodlike tantrum unfold. Lost to his own creation. How unsurprising. A moment of silence passed. The wind did not blow, yet the air felt alive. The two angels stood in shared amusement, their creators' antics as surreal as they were entertaining. Veldonava flopped backwards onto the grass, arms spread out dramatically. Stupid voice, cheating system piece of. Lumiel closed his eyes for a moment. Then he opened them and whispered quietly. Then again, it's Veldonava-sama. I suppose it's okay. Dino chuckled softly, folding his arms. Who knows? He looks pretty damn embarrassed. Lumiel glanced once more at the scene, thoughtful. I wonder. And with that simple, ambiguous murmur, the moment passed, quiet and strange, like everything else in the void before time. Meanwhile, back on the grassy plain of nothingness, the impossible field of life sprouting from the void, Veldonava let out a long sigh, his expression returning to its usual amused tranquility. He rolled over lazily on the grass, arms stretched, eyes half-lidded. All right, voice. I get it. You created way more than me. Can't say I want to sit here and hear you read off all 120 billion of your creations. I might actually die of boredom. How about instead of that, I tell you the skills I made? A pause. Then, the familiar resonant tone of the system echoed softly in reply. Acknowledged. Request accepted. Please proceed, Veldonava-sama. A faint smirk touched Veldonava's lips. He propped himself up on one elbow, his star-flecked hair cascading like a dark waterfall. Sweet. He flicked his fingers, and glowing glyphs began to swirl in the air around him. Dozens of divine characters, ancient sigils formed of intent and power, danced through the sky. So, I decided to group my creations into 2 categories, he began, voice tinged with that odd mix of pride and mischief. Just for flavor, you know. A little style. First, I made a set of skills representing, let's call it order. A refined series of ultimate skills based on virtue and harmony. I named them. He paused for dramatic effect. The floating symbols around him aligned and shimmered like constellations. The Heavenly Virtues series. Of course, he didn't say it aloud, but the reason he named them that was simple, it sounded cool as hell. Veldonava, all-powerful god of stars and existence, was a simp for good aesthetics. He raised a hand, and with each name spoken, a symbol flared brightly. Michael, Lord of Justice. Raphael, Wisdom King. Uriel, Lord of Vows. Sariel, Lord of Hope. Metatron, Lord of Purity. Ragal, Lord of Charity. And Gabriel, Lord of Patience. Each skill was tied to fundamental cosmic principles, justice and wisdom, purity and hope, essences that stabilize the rules of reality, interwoven with the laws of causality and balance. Elegant, right, he murmured proudly. But, the universe isn't one-sided. As he said it, a strange shift came over the void. The winds of nothing twisted slightly, and new glyphs began to form in sharp, chaotic patterns, darker, more aggressive, yet just as refined. When I made the virtues, their opposites came into being naturally. A reaction. Can't have order without chaos, after all. Balance is built into existence. And so, he sat upright, voice lowering a bit. Their counterparts were born. I call them the Deadly Sin series. There was a strange amusement in his eyes now. Almost as if he hadn't intended to create these, but was now very entertained by the outcome. Beelzebub, Lord of Gluttony. Lucifer, Lord of Pride. Mammon, Lord of Greed. Leviathan, Lord of Envy. Satanel, Lord of Wrath. Belphegor, Lord of Sloth. And Asmodeus, Lord of Lust. The air pulsed with a darker weight as the names were spoken, potent forces, dangerous in the wrong hands, but masterfully designed. I didn't actually mean to make those, he admitted sheepishly. Kinda just happened when I wasn't paying attention. So, to avoid the blame if something bad comes from them. He stretched out his hand, and with a soft hum, 7 spheres of black gold light shot off into the sky, disappearing into the distance. I uploaded them into the distribution system. Whoever qualifies, gets them. Not my problem anymore. Acknowledged. Distribution complete. Deadly Sin Ultimate skills available for fatebound selection. Yup. Just wash my hands of that one, Veldonava said with a smirk. As for the heavenly virtues, he clutched his fist gently, drawing the glyphs back into his body. These ones, though, I'm keeping them. He lay back again, arms behind his head, gazing up at the void ceiling like a man watching clouds that didn't exist. Then, in a rare moment of quiet seriousness, he whispered. But even with those, I lost the contest, huh? The voice responded immediately. Affirmative. However, while your total quantity was lesser, your ultimate skills exceed all created by this system in quality, depth, and divine potential. Hey, he chuckled softly to himself. Well, I did pour my heart into them. Truth was, each skill was formed with an absurd amount of divine essence, far beyond what would be considered logical. He didn't make them for numbers. He made them for impact. They weren't just abilities, they were laws, symbolic engines that could govern reality on a conceptual level. He had even embedded a secret rule. If anyone ever manages to gather all 7 virtue skills, that person will be granted half of my power, he murmured aloud, to no one in particular. Confirmed. Rule registered. Of course, he added with a knowing grin, since no 2 individuals can hold the same ultimate skill, and they're already bonded by nature to the soul, it's basically impossible for one person to ever have all 7. Not impossible. Just unthinkable. That was the kind of game Veldonava liked best. But he wasn't quite done. Raising one hand slowly, he summoned 3 more glyphs, hidden skills, ones not meant for balance or war or cosmic symbolism. Just curiosities. Oh, right, I also made these. He pointed to the first one. Ahura Mazda, the power to create anything, including matter, souls, and skills. Next, Information King, Akashic Record. This one's meant to manage divine knowledge and logic across layers of spacetime. And lastly, hey, a weird one. Magical's Breeder, Ariactor. It's kind of alive. Evolves on its own. Don't ask me why. It just felt fun to make. The voice remained quiet, simply registering the data. Veldonava closed his eyes as the 3 glyphs dissolved into his chest, unseen by the world, hidden even from the angels. I'll keep these, too. Just in case. The stars in his hair sparkled faintly as his body relaxed once more. The field around him remained still, soft, endless. Above him stretched the void, and yet, somehow, the air felt warm. There, that's my half of all creation, I guess. He yawned, letting the silence take him again. Being not all-knowing is kind of fun, he muttered, half asleep. I don't deny that. And with those words, the Star King Dragon, God of the Infinite, napped peacefully in a void of nothing, on a patch of grass that shouldn't exist, with no one to challenge his dreams. Not yet. Meanwhile, near the grand celestial gate of origin, 2 figures remained standing vigil. Before them stretched the infinite void, alive with stars, swirling galaxies, threads of possibility weaving through the dark tapestry of creation. The very air shimmered with fragments of worlds yet to be born, and the ever-sprawling sky above pulsed with the rhythmic breath of Veldonava's cosmic dream. Dino yawned, rubbing the back of his neck as he cast a glance toward the sleeping figure in the distance. He fell asleep, Dino muttered with a lazy smile. Man, now I want a nap too. Beside him stood Lumiel, the 8th primordial angel. With long, flowing sapphire hair that shimmered like liquid night, golden eyes that gleamed with quiet curiosity, and twin black horns curved like those of a young dragon, he looked like something between divinity and dusk itself. Unlike his siblings, his expression held a softness, a strange awareness. Almost human. Lumiel didn't look away from their creator. His voice was soft, yet clear. Go ahead, take a nap, I'll watch over Veldonava-sama. Dino blinked, surprised for a moment. You sure? I mean, it's not like I don't trust you or anything, but, the others. Lumiel turned slightly, his hair catching the ambient light of collapsing stars and embryonic galaxies. For a fleeting moment, the strands reflected constellations, not unlike the starlight woven through Veldonava's own hair. Yes, Lumiel said, I'm sure. Dino smiled, slow and genuine. Thanks, Lumi. And with that, the lazy angel lay down by the gate, curling slightly like a cat, arms behind his head. His breathing evened. He was asleep in moments. Lumiel turned, the weight of responsibility lingering on his shoulders. Quiet steps brought him closer, closer to the divine being who had given him form and soul. 3 feet away from where Veldonava lay in the grass, Lumiel stopped and slowly sat down. He looked up. The void sky above was a boundless, AWE-inspiring canvas. Celestial rivers flowed like dreams across it. Universes bubbled in and out of phase. Nebulae stretched like brushstrokes of divine color, and distant realities twinkled with the potential of life. Lumiel gazed silently, his heart strangely full. The reflection of the stars danced across his hair again, as though the cosmos recognized something familiar within him, something akin to its creator. Then, after a long span of peace, Veldonava stirred. The Star King Dragon blinked the sleep from his eyes, his gaze catching on the presence so close to him. For a moment, he looked genuinely surprised. Oh, it's you. Lumiel bowed his head respectfully. Yes, Veldonava-sama. The god yawned and propped himself up with an elbow, blinking at the strange angel who didn't quite act like the rest. What are you doing here? Watching over you, while you rested. Veldonava's eyes softened, unreadable. There was a flicker of something faintly amused, faintly touched. I see. A silence passed. And then, Lumiel's voice, quiet and hesitant. Veldonava-sama, may I ask something? Sure, Veldonava said, stretching. But before Lumiel could speak, the silence shattered. A sharp, righteous voice echoed across the plain. You. From the northern winds, descending with divine intensity, came Feldway, the first of the primordial angels. Clad in black gold armor with sunbright wings, his face was twisted in fury and frustration. You're not even doing anything. He barked. Standing around like you matter. You disobeyed the chain of command. Lumiel sighed softly, already knowing where this was going. Veldonava sighed too. Feldway dropped to one knee before his god, bowing with utmost reverence. My lord Veldonava-sama, forgive my failure. I will punish Lumiel immediately for his insubordination. Lumiel stood slowly. Punish me. For what, exactly? Feldway's eyes burned. For ignoring my orders. I am the leader of the primordial angels. You were commanded to return. Lumiel's expression remained calm. So what? I never agreed to follow you. Feldway's fury exploded. You dare defy divine hierarchy. You were created to serve our Lord, and by extension, me. You are an anomaly. An impurity. The atmosphere tensed. And then, Veldonava's voice, gentle, yet undeniably absolute. That's enough. Feldway froze. His wings trembled. He turned, eyes wide. But, my lord. I told Lumiel to stay here, Veldonava said. He did nothing wrong. You can go now. There was a silence that crushed the sky. Feldway clenched his jaw, bowing once again. As you command. He stood and turned sharply, his footsteps cold and clipped as he vanished into the void. A short distance away, Dino stirred. His nap had been abruptly ended by Feldway's yelling. Sitting up with a yawn, he stretched his limbs as two more figures approached behind him. One was Pico, a petite angel with lively green eyes and long pale blonde hair tied into neat twin pigtails. Her small frame gave her a childish appearance, but the divine light in her aura told of immense power. The other was Garasha, a tall, dark-skinned woman with flowing red hair like molten magma and golden irises that shimmered like polished suns. Pico frowned, arms crossed. Looks like Feldway still doesn't like Lumiel. Garasha nodded. Can't say I blame him. There's reason. Dino scratched his cheek lazily. But Lumiel hasn't done anything bad. So why treat him like a problem? Garasha's gaze was serious. He's not like us. We were born. No attachment. We follow orders. Lumiel doesn't. Pico chimed in, voice light but honest. Yeah, it's weird. He's curious, expressive, like he feels things. But we're not supposed to. Dino shrugged. He still respects Veldonava-sama, though. Isn't that enough? Honestly, I kinda like that he's different. Makes things less boring. Garasha folded her arms, unconvinced. Maybe. But not everyone sees it that way. A new voice cut through their quiet conversation, Zelaria. The fourth primordial angel. His face was stern and severe, framed by silver black hair and emerald eyes filled with disapproval. His aura pulsed with cold authority. You shouldn't acknowledge him at all. Lumiel is not one of us. Pico and Garasha both turned toward him. We don't think so, Pico said quietly. He is one of us, Garasha added. Just different. Zelaria sneered. TCH. You're all the same. Weak. With that, he turned and vanished into a streak of light, disappearing toward the outer boundaries of the void. The three remaining angels said nothing. Their eyes turned toward the center of the field, where Lumiel now sat once more, beside Veldonava, both looking into the sky. An angel unlike the others. A being born of nothingness, yet reflecting the stars. Veldonava stretched once more, eyes still half-lidded from sleep, but a hint of curiosity gleaming within their golden depths. So, he began lazily, now you can tell me. What was it you wanted to ask, Lumiel? Lumiel, still seated calmly before him, gave a slight nod. I saw you, creating something, he said softly. You called them, ultimate skills. Veldonava tilted his head, blinking slowly as his lips curled into a wry grin. Oh, you saw that, he chuckled. Yes, I did make them. Just experimenting with the laws of conceptual authority. Pretty neat stuff, huh? Lumiel nodded again. It is fascinating. The structure of the skills, the concepts they contain. A fusion of law and will. They're like thoughts made real. A pause. Then Lumiel's voice dropped, hesitant but unwavering. This might be strange, but may I ask a favor? That made Veldonava blink. A favor. That was new. In truth, the primordial angels rarely asked for favors. They simply existed to fulfill Veldonava's will, much like cogs in a divine machine. When they did ask something, it was typically superficial. Feldway, for instance, had begged that his body resemble Veldonava's own, to be a mirror of their creator in beauty and stature. It had been granted, of course. Zelaria had asked for 6 radiant wings, twice the norm, to appear more complete. Cornu had requested impenetrable armor to better serve in battle. Obera asked for elegance, her form sculpted into celestial allure. Even Pico and Garasha, during their formation, had shyly requested touches of personality or aesthetic beauty. But Lumiel, he'd asked for nothing. Weak compared to the others, limited in raw power, but he never complained. Never asked for more. He observed, listened, and acted, different from the rest. And perhaps it was because of this difference, that the others began to change as well. Feldway grew angrier, easily disturbed when Lumiel acted of his own will. Zelleria began to judge, drawing lines between what was pure, and what was not. Even the others, Garasha, Pico, and Dino, had begun expressing preferences, opinions, reactions. Subtle signs of ego, emotion, individuality. All of it, trailing in the wake of Lumiel's quiet defiance. Veldonava had noticed, and now he leaned forward, gaze sharpening, intrigued. Well then, the god said. Go ahead, ask. Lumiel bowed his head. Veldonava-sama, may I try to create ultimate skills as you did? The question struck harder than it should have. Veldonava's eyes widened in genuine surprise. It was unthinkable. Ultimate skills weren't simply powers. They were concepts forged from authority, the fundamental energy of the world's structure. He alone could wield that energy, because he was the source. Even the primordials, born of his essence, didn't have that ability. They could receive skills, be bestowed gifts. But create them. That was a divine right. Veldonava narrowed his eyes. You do realize that you can't make ultimate skills, right? You don't have the authority for it. Lumiel looked up then, his gaze steady. Calm, certain. I do realize that, which is why I would like to ask you for a portion of your power. Temporarily. Silence. The wind in the void ceased. Stars held their breath. Veldonava's heart paused, then leapt. He does understand. And yet, he still asked. Not out of pride, not for vanity, but for curiosity, ambition, creation. A child's desire to build. It made Veldonava smile. Hey, you're really something. He stood, dusting off his robe, the fabric laced with galaxies and time. All right, Lumiel, I'll grant you some of my authority. But, he raised a finger with playful warning, only for 2 days. During that time, I want to see 5 ultimate skills. At least. Lumiel bowed deeply, wings shimmering. As you command, Veldonava-sama. A crackle of divine power surged through the air. Veldonava raised his hand, golden light swirling into his palm, then mixing with threads of violet, a color only seen in chaos energy, an omen of voidborn potential. He snapped his fingers. Boom. A pulse of light engulfed Lumiel. His form glowed golden, then violet, then both, a celestial fusion that illuminated the field like a second sun. His body floated briefly above the ground, eyes closed, accepting the weight of authority. Then the light faded. Lumiel opened his eyes. The stars reflected within them, but now, those stars seemed alive. He stood, reverent and still. This energy, it's heavy, he whispered. But beautiful. Veldonava watched him closely. You better use it wisely, little angel. Lumiel turned, wings unfurling. Feathers of silver, laced with radiant gold, shimmered with divine energy. His wings, once dull compared to his brethren, now shone. With a single beat, he rose into the air. I will not waste this power, Lumiel said. I will create with purpose. And with that, he soared upward, into the void beyond. Toward a distant, flickering world. A fragile world destined for destruction in only a few years' time. Veldonava's eyes followed him. That world, he muttered, voice tinged with interest. Let's see what he does with it. He watched Lumiel vanish into the darkness beyond stars. And then, suddenly, he grinned. A childish, mischievous grin that had no place on the face of the supreme god of creation. I wonder if I should prank Feldway later. Maybe change his hair pink for a day. Laughing to himself, Veldonava turned away from the field and began walking. Up ahead, the heavenly star palace floated in the void, an impossible structure of silver glass and eternal light, its towers stretching beyond reality, shaped by thought and desire. He shoved his hands into the sleeves of his robe and sauntered toward it, whistling a tune that hadn't been invented yet. In his wake, the grass he had lain upon remained flattened. And the stars above shimmered with anticipation. For the first time in countless ages, something unexpected had begun.